ITP120Mod4 week 1. I did a movie on Sunday night, and due to technical difficulties, it did not come out well, and then we ended up getting abruptly ended at the, for some reason, my internet went out. I'm in Arizona, as you guys know, and I only have one computer, and things are technically a little bit different here. But I just decided I would re-record this one. So here we go from scratch. Thanks for joining me who we did Sunday night. This will just give you above and beyond. Mod 4. Mod 3 went great. If you notice out here, I do have the answer key for Mod 3. And you might want to look at that. I can do a recording on it, but we all did so well on that I didn't do one. But if you want me to, remember, you can always request those things. I'd be happy to do it. I really would, as we went through. But I think looping, we're doing okay. Some of you said you still need practice, which of course you can get more practice because we'll be doing loops for all the rest of the modules as we go. If you need a little bit more practice, though, for my Virginia Tech students, I did add, wherever I put it, I thought I put it here somewhere. Methods in a nutshell. More static movies. Oh, it's going to be one of those. Let me see. Oh, I'm in the N1 section. Okay, there we go. I knew it was here somewhere. Well, you guys are getting the same materials. I just add a few extra things sometimes. And what I did for the Virginia Tech students was I put the quizzes from Mod 3 for the Virginia Western students. Virginia Western students, they do weekly quizzes, and Virginia Tech students are doing a project instead. But otherwise, we're doing the same material. So right there we go. What you'll find in there, that's an actual real zip file, zip file. And if you open it up, there are the two doc files, which are what they did for the last 2 weeks during Mod 3, and the two answer keys. And they're on loops. The first one, I think they did a sentinel and a while loop. They did a sentinel and a yes, no, I think. And then in the next week, they did a for loop. Now, if you need more practice, let me know. That's critical. I can give you as many problems as you want. Okay, I can work problems forever. And so just let me know how we're doing. Your success is certainly my goal as we go through. Now, what do we have for this week? This is probably, or this module, this is probably the most critical module we have. I'm not saying it's the most difficult module, but it's the most critical module that we have, because if we think about it, Java classes have only fields and methods. That's all. And every Java class, okay, can only have fields or methods. Now, what we did in Mod 1, we had one method, main. So nobody says that fields and methods are both required. And so if we think about what we call blueprints, quote, that little blueprints, things that have main so that they run, they're Java classes, just like the blueprints are Java classes. It's just that in the blueprints, in the drivers, we typically do not have any, we so far have not had anything more than main, or I think in one of them we had a simple little print program, okay? They can have more. And we'll actually see that there are more methods very commonly in the driver, as well as more methods in the blueprint. And then we start talking about how do you write methods? Okay, how do you call methods as you go through and do that? And that's what Mod 4 is all about as we go through and do that. All right. And so I've got you a number of movies here that were pre-recorded here. And typically you want to do it in this order, I would think. We're going to cover mostly the APIs today, but we'll look at some of the other ones. Methods in a nutshell, I'll talk to you about that, static methods, and introduction to association. So let's go see what I've got out here for fun and entertainment for you. Here are the programs that you have, or the packages you have, and we have movies for each. If you look at here, the methods from the APIs, just so that you know that. Oops, this is kind of from last night's movie. We'll be back. Let me get rid of that. All right. That is when Java provides classes for us. And we'll talk about that during this movie. But typically we have two sets of classes. I don't want to say types because then we'll think they're different, but they aren't. The ones we write ourselves and the one Java provides. Okay, both of them just have fields and methods as you go through. Now, fields are private, and so nobody else can use the fields, and so they're not very useful. I don't mean not useful, but certainly not for other programs to use. So it's just methods. And so we got to learn how to actually use this language that Java has provided for us. It's one of the richest languages there is. That's part of the reason why Java has been so popular. It is such a rich environment that we don't have to write as much of our own stuff as you do in other languages. But it's critical that we understand how to use what Java has provided. And that's one of the big goals for today. That's the goal for the quiz for my Virginia Western students for this week. And so I'll be back to this. Okay, we'll talk through this ourselves tonight, but we'll also, there is a movie right there, Methods from Java APIs. So, and I'll show you which one of our programs that we're working fit into that one. And so you want to look at that as you go through. All right, this is more blueprints, drivers, blueprints, drivers, blueprints, drivers. All right, that's another thing we're going to look at. That's probably what you want to look at first as you're doing Mod 4. We'll talk about this today. Okay, I won't go through all of these because maybe I will, maybe I won't. I thought I had a movie on those, but maybe I'll go through those. Maybe, I think a lot of them are in here, okay, but I will actually go through those as well. Let me see. There is a start program here. Don't forget that. And the last thing, I'm just trying to put stuff in order here. Static methods. We will talk about what static methods are. Okay. And there is a movie on those as you go through. All right. And then the last thing, the thing you want to put off for week 2, if you're staying with me. Now, some of you are working ahead, which is perfectly fine. Okay. And that's fine. Just go at your own speed. Some of you, we come into Sunday night, which is now Monday morning, and we say, okay, here's the things we're covering tonight. Go work these problems in our assignment. And then the next week we say, okay, here's the rest of them. Go work those. If you're sticking with me on that, and that's fine, whichever way you want to do it. I would this week, if you, unless you have time at the very end, do not look at carpet, do not look at pets, and don't look at sales. All right, so spend your time looking at these 3 as you go through. And there's your start files for those as you go through. But let me tell you what that last part is, the carpet, the sales, the pets, very quickly, because we'll be back next week about it. In everything we've talked about in Mod 2, and what we will talk about at the beginning of Mod 3, we have a blueprint and a driver, a blueprint and a driver, a blueprint and a driver. I have create a class for invoices. I make some invoices. I create a class for cookies. Yum. I make some cookies. Okay, that's not the way the real world works. For people that are database people out there, that would be similar to if I had one database table to run my company. Okay, when you do that, and that's not going to work. And so in reality, what you end up having is you have a bunch of blueprints and a driver. So we will look at that at the very end of Mod 4, but just so you can see that. I want to make some sales, but if I want to make some sales, I make sales to customers. And so I have a customer blueprint. I have inventory. Okay. And now here's where the difference is. I have sales. And notice in here, a sales has a customer and has an inventory. That's called association. We will be back to that. All right. For a real application, you may have 10, 12, 14 blueprints, and then something that runs it, i.e. the driver. A driver is my term. Other people use it, but it's not a reserved word in Java or anything of that sort as we go through. All right, so let's go back. All right, so lots to be done in Mod 4, but I will guide you as we go through. And remember, I will always make extra movies. I'll always put out extra samples if you want samples as we go through. All right. Blueprints, drivers as we go through. Now, I want you to go back and review once more the blueprints and drivers. At the end of Mod 3, I did that real fast, retail driver, retail item, retail driver, whatever it was, just to remind you of what is there. We're going to make it richer in Mod 4. We're going to add more methods to the blueprint. Okay, we're going to figure out how methods really work, what a Java method really is. And that's that methods in a nutshell that you definitely want to look at as you go through it. And I'll show you what that is. So, and I think what I'll do is I will go over that. I've got a movie on that, but it's so critical. I will go over that next week after you've read it. So one of the first things I want you to do to get started. Okay, there's our objectives. There's our instructions, sample jar file, of course, book sources. We all know that. These two are, I think, are pretty critical. Not just, well, this second one is because you're going to use it right away here. I'll talk about it in just about 2 minutes. Okay. But this, I think, is reasonably good. I put this together on how to actually do methods in Java. It's all we got. All right. And so I would want you to look at that, if you will. And there is a movie for that out there. It says here, I'm trying to find the right thing. Ooh, that's Arizona. Can't find things here. Oh, I know. I'm a little slow here. The movie is out there under our modules, and it says it's a little bit old. I was going to redo it. I watched it today. I said it's still pretty good. There's no reason to redo an hour movie, okay, when you do that. But do look at the Methods in a Nutshell movie, and it's going to talk about how to do methods things. And then that's the first thing I think we'll hit next Sunday. I'm going to have to move next Sunday's movie. I will put, because, of course, 3 o'clock East Coast time is 1 o'clock Arizona time, which means that's exactly when spring training games start. So I will put out an announcement for that. And of course, I always record it just in case you can't join us as you go through. All right, so first thing we need to do, review blueprints and drivers. I have this thoughts on classes. All right, and I'm going to ask you to read this, and that's going to be actually part of your first assignment as you go through. And so if I open this up, let me open this up. Let me come out here and open up our instructions. And then we'll be good to go. All right. So if you look at this, this is essentially look through these things as you go through. All right. And the first to do, we got green this time, is walk through an example describing it step by step. Open up the document called Thoughts on Classes. You'll be creating a widget and a widget driver. Okay, type or copy and paste with me as I try to again explain classes. Okay, this must be in your final submission. Okay, now, note in the comments, we're using arrays in this application. You're not expected to understand them at that point. Again, it's just something for you to see. We'll be hitting those real hard in Mod 5. So that's just copy and paste. So here's what I'm expecting you to do for the first thing, for the first group. I would come out here. I'd create myself a package called DWolfMod4. Wow, except use your name as you go through. Okay, and I would open up Thoughts on Classes. Read this. Da 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 da. We have fields, we have methods, okay. We have private fields. They all must be private as you go through, okay. And so I have code here. You're going to either copy that code if you want to just copy and paste, or type it in. Good practice when you do that. You will be creating a class called widget. So the first thing you should do is go out to your package, create yourself a Java class, named it widget. It does not run. It's a blueprint. Okay. Classes must have private methods. I have an ID, I have a number in stock, I have a cost each, I have a reorder level. Now you can either type this in, or right now I'm hitting Control C. Make sure you put it in the right place. Goes inside the class. There you go. Okay. We need our constructors. We need a no argument constructor. We need a full constructor. Okay. You read through this document. You go, okay, that's cool. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it. Okay. And so what you're doing is, as you are reading this document, you are creating that class as you go through. Now, it's pretty straightforward. You've got to read through this. It talks about how instead of this using I, N, C, and R, you could have used this when you actually have it generated. Don't recopy this. It's the same thing as you go through. Okay, so don't, make sure you understand what you're copying when you do that. We need a toString, copy paste it, whatever. Generate getters and setters, because you know how to do that. Okay, other methods here. We're going to talk about methods. Really start talking about other methods. Below level. Okay, got 2 versions of that. We'll talk about what that means when you have multiple versions. discount, widget driver. Okay, now I'm getting down to the widget driver. So what I should then do is come out here, click on this. Okay, create myself a new class. It's called widget driver, Type, there we go. It runs, bingo. Okay, so when you get done, you will have an application that runs. Now, the common mistake I've seen when I've had people do this program before, or this little exercise before, is essentially just putting things in the wrong place. If I have this guy, let's say I come down here, got some code here, we talk about that code. All right, and then I get this lovely code here, okay, and I take that and I copy it after I understand what it does. Don't just copy and paste, I know you guys will understand it. And then you take and you go like this, and I get all those red X's, and then you send me an email and said, why do I have red X's? Make sure you put it in the right place. Okay, this code, there's no such thing in Java. Well, there's a little bit of such things, but in reality for this class, of code outside of a method, except for fields, when we define fields. And so here's my method. These guys should have gotten dumped in here, in my main method, because that's where the code goes, not outside of a method. And so the biggest mistake I've seen for people is to do either that, or to, and that's when means you really got to understand what we're doing, which is a good thing. We like understanding. Or to take and do something like, I don't know, let's go find it. Here, take this guy, okay, and put it here. But what you've got is you've got a method inside of a method. If I click at the end of this, okay, I can't put a method inside of a method. Well, there are ways you can do that in Java, but not the way we're doing it. And so it's going to be unhappy with this. And you might not understand what that means, but indeed, make certain that you're placing your code in the right place. If you do that, okay, this guy's going to run. Just run widget driver. You've got your first bullet point done for this module. All right, the next thing that we're working on. So read through that, get through that number 9, which is our green, okay? And then the next thing says, let's go to methods in a nutshell. We really want to understand methods. And so we're going to work through that. I would do that in the I would watch that movie when you do that. And then we're going to look at stock and stack drivers. So I'm on number 11 now today. All right, so next thing we'll do is to go look through these classes. And we'll do some of those right now as we go through. I think there's a movie doing these, but it doesn't hurt to do things twice. These are just solidifying and extending what we did in Mod 2, which is blueprints and drivers. When we do that. All right, so let's go look at cookie and cookie driver. You can start doing these in your sleep, I bet, or your nightmares, whichever it is. I just put don't save because I'm not going to save these guys. All right, cool. All right, so cookie. Okay, you should be getting really good at looking at these. Again, I've got comments in here, but you should be fine. Private. I have a name of a cookie. It's going to make me hungry, cost each, and how many I have in stock. I have a no argument constructor. I have a full constructor. I have a toString. Okay? I have getters and setters. And what we're going to do in Mod 4 is we're going to start adding other methods. Other methods go here as we go through. All right. Now let's talk about those other methods. Oh, let me mention one other thing, then we'll do that. A couple places I have put this number format outside, and you probably really shouldn't do that. We want things as narrow scope as possible, which means in the region we're going to use it. If you take this guy, and I did it in a couple of my examples and put it here, it looks like a field, which is probably not as good a thing as you go through, because it's not really a field. And I did have a couple of you do that, and then you generated a getter and setter for that. Do not generate a getter and setter for that. But you're better off if you take this guy and put it only where you need it, narrow scope, let's put it in here, life's good. All right, methods in a nutshell. We need to make certain we understand very crystal clearly the difference between a method definition and a method call. Method definition and method call. A method definition, that's what we have here. We're defining what a method does. We're not calculating cost. We're saying if you wanted to use this method, it would calculate the cost for you. All right. So this is called the signature or the header. I tend to call it the signature, which is across the top. For us, always must be public. Second thing is the return type. Even if you don't return something, you've got to write the word void. Okay, so the second thing is the return type. The third thing is the method name, named correctly, small first letter, okay, camel case, capital every other word. Has to have parentheses, and then inside these parentheses go what's called the parameters. 2 words to get crystal clear in this movie: parameters, arguments. Parameters are in the method definition. It tells you what data you need to provide if you want to use this method. In this case, I don't need any, because to get the cost of the cookie, I need the cost each times the number, but those are fields. And you automatically have the fields because I'm in this blueprint. In here, to set the name, you've got to give me a 1 value. That's called your parameter right there, which is a string data type, which is the name. All right, and we'll keep looking at that. So this is called the signature. Now, this code that goes inside of methods, since we're studying methods in Mod 4, once you figure out what the method is and the signature and the brace, notice we always enclose the comment, the code inside of braces instead of braces. Everything that goes inside is everything we've done before. There can be loops, there can be decisions, there can be whatever. It's going to get more complicated what's inside the methods. But I don't care about the guts of the methods right now. I care about how to write them, okay? Method definitions, how to use them, method calls. Okay, now, let's say that I did this last night, but when you look at your code, it's not going to have this last line. Okay, let's say that you wanted to, every single time that you wrote the toString, you wanted to call the cost method. Notice you can do that. Okay, you can do that. You can just stick this in here. And notice I just directly call cost. Methods in a nutshell says if you want to call a method and it's defined, that's here, okay, in the same class, just call it. Call it by meaning just write it. Common mistake is to do this. Java's not going to like that. Java's going to say cost cannot be resolved to a variable. Okay? Methods always have a set of parentheses after them. If you don't put a set of parentheses after it, Java thinks it's a variable as you go through and do that. All right. So if I want to use this method in the same class, I just directly call it. I just write it. Okay? And the things that go in here, if there were, are the arguments. The arguments and parameters, the things that go into here, okay, must match in number and data type. What does that mean? That means that if I had an int x here and a string y, which I don't because I didn't use them, okay, int x, oh, that I spelled string right, I can't have a sting, huh? There you go. Okay, Java is going to come back and say the method cost int string and the type cookies is not applicable for the arguments. Notice again, it uses the word arguments, nothing. You promised me you'd pass me an int and a string. You passed me nothing. Java says, I don't know what this method is. Okay, I don't know what that method is. And so what you could put in here is, again, I'm really wrecking this code, but that's all right, for hello. And Java says, I'm happy. Because your arguments in the method definition, your arguments in the method call, here we are, and the parameters in the method definition match in number, two of them, and data type, int, string, string. Okay? And so when it does this, it's going to take the value of 4, stick it in x, take the value of hello, stick it in y, and of course I didn't use it because I made a dumb little method here, okay, as you go through and do that. But parameters, arguments must match in number and data type. All right, let me put this back to make some sense out of it because I have no idea what I'm going to do with x and y here. All right, there you go. So if they're in the same class, I can just call them. All right. Now, our drivers are going to have more code in them. Okay, obviously retail item was pretty useless in Mod 3. Just to remind you, I can put loops in here. Okay, I can do lots of varieties of things as we go through and do that. and do everything we've learned in mods 1, 2, and 3, and now we get more powerful movies as we go through. Excuse me. This program is totally done, but you would have developed it in pieces. Okay, sorry about that. What you would have done is you would have said, okay, I want to make some cookies. I want to sell some cookies here. All right. I know cookies have 4 fields. Okay, so ignore my loop, ignore all this stuff. Your very first version, remember, as we talked about in mod 3, is write these in versions, get it to run, add something, get it to run. My first version would have to ask the user for the needed data. What type of cookies? Get the data. How many boxes? Get the data. How much does each box cost? Get the data. I create a cookie instance when you actually do this, and this is something I added last night. We'll do that in a minute. Okay? When you actually do that, let me get rid of the stuff we added last night. I'll be back. Create a cookie instance, print it out. Okay? Pretty straightforward. That's kind of what we would have done in mod 2. Now we're going to add things to that as we go through and do that. Okay. One of them is I'm going to add into that a loop. Okay. And so I could then loop. Notice the loop. You guys are used to this. I want to use a yes, no. So while more equals yes, string more equals yes, while more equals yes, ask for the data. Okay. Create a cookie, print it out. That's all we got. And then down here, notice more sales, yes or no. Okay, there's the end of my loop. There's my scan.next line. We're still having some trouble with that, a few of us. Keep working on it. The last thing I did, notice I did a string, an int, a double. And the next time I have a string after primitive data type, I need an extra scan.next line. So now I could put a loop in here. Awesome. All right. Next thing I want to do is add a counter and accumulator. I want to know how many boxes I bought. I want to know the total cost. Okay. A counter and accumulator for mod 3. Okay. Now, a little bit different here. Notice I want to know the number of boxes, just the number of boxes. Let's look at this very carefully. This line right here, new for us, number 40. We know how counters and accumulators work. Take the old value, add the new one. That's the total now. Take the old value, add the new one. That's the total. Okay, when you actually do that. But now what we're going to do is the things that we're accumulating are actually related to the object instead of like we did in mod 3. So I want to add up the total number of boxes. How do I get the number of boxes? Cookies.getNumber. Okay. Object.method. Methods in a nutshell. Go look at that. If you call a method from a different class, you've got to do object.method. All right, that's a method we had in our cookies class to get the number of cookies. So notice we created a cookies instance here, which now says that we want to call this method on that object. That will tell me how many boxes of cookies there are for this current order that's coming through here. Okay, when you actually do that. And so that will total up the number of boxes. You can do it in one step like that. You can also do it like this. Notice here, I actually calculated the cost, cookies.cost. When I was over here and I wanted to call the cost method, I just called it directly. It's in the same class. All right. If I want to call it over here, I have to say object.method because it's in a different class. When you actually do that, it's in the cookies class, I'm in the cookies driver class. Okay. But once I do that, I can then accumulate the total here. All right. I'll come back to that. In the while loop, I'm accumulating these totals. After the while loop is over, I now print out my totals when I get out of there. All right. Now, you might say, okay, now why do I need object.method here? Well, let's say I create another object. I like chocolate chip. Chocolate chip. I want, I don't know, those are going to cost about $6 a box, I bet. I don't know how much Girl Scout cookies are anymore. I want 2 boxes, please. Okay, so now I've got 2 objects. I've got one called cookies. Let's say somebody filled in peanut butter. So I got peanut butter cookies and I got chocolate chip cookies. This is why it makes no sense to say double the cost, let's say. To say that here. Because Java is going to say the cost of what? Okay, do you want the cost of the peanut butter cookies? Do you want the cost of the chocolate chip cookies? Which one would you like? And so if you hover over this, and this makes a lot of sense, if you look at methods in a nutshell, it says the method cost is undefined for the type cookie driver. I'm in cookie driver. Methods in a nutshell says if you want to call a method from the same class, just like we did over here, just call the method. And so Java is saying, well, you're just calling the method. So I'm looking for a cost class, cost method. In the cookie driver class, there isn't one. And again, that should make sense to you because the question is, you want the cost of which one? So it's always object.method. If I want the chocolate chip cookies, I will say that. And then Java's happy. Oh, you wanted the chocolate chip cookies. Oh, you wanted the peanut butter cookies. Okay. And so whenever you're calling a method from a different class, it's got to be object.method as you go through. Clear as mud. All right. I'm going to come back to day and day driver later. Invoice. Fields. That guy probably should be stuck in here. That would be much better to put it there. Money below is not really a field. You should not generate getters and setters for these or any constant that you declare. And I wrote that there, but it would be much better to stick that inside of here. That's the only place you're using it. No argument constructor, full constructor. Ooh, cool methods. I have a equals method. Okay, there's my argument. My parameter. If you want this, you're going to have to pass me in another invoice. I'm in the invoice class. Okay, I'm passing you an invoice. I decided what equals means for and we'll talk in detail about equals, but equals means for an invoice is that they have the same item number. It's up to you, the programmer. It's kind of like the toString. You write toStrings so you can print things to the console. Okay, we write an equals method to determine what it means for two objects to be equal. In this case, I got the name. So if I.getName equals this.getName, return true, else return false. We'll do more in the equals method later. All right, now, here's a cost method, very similar to what we just had. Okay, again, you can do it in individual steps, which I suggest because then the debugger works better, or you could just do it in one. Something this simple, you might just do it in one. You might start getting a little nervous and say, how do I know what signature to use? Well, for Mod 4, that's easy because I will tell you exactly what I want and you will write exactly what I tell you to write. Okay? In reality, it kind of depends. It depends on a lot of cases whether you want to do certain things, and we'll talk about that as we go through. But do write them the way I did. A number of you way back in Mod 2 when we were doing payroll wanted to return a string. Okay? Methods should do one and only one thing as you go through. Here's the problem. If I returned a string here, I could not then use that method here. And we want to do things in small. This is my gross. This is my net. And notice in here, I actually called the method from here. But if this is returned a double, I couldn't have done math on a double. If this is returned a string, I couldn't do math on a string. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, if you wanted to write this as a pretty string, okay, that's formatted nicely, write yourself another method. So method should do one and only one thing. So notice, this is a method. This method uses it and then does a little calculation that if you buy over 20, you get a 25% discount. If you buy more than 10, you get a 15% discount. Actually, otherwise, just forget it, no discount. All right, and then if I go to the driver here, again, I've got some wonderful comments here. In this case, what I decided to do was I decided to switch on, to do my loop on a character. Characters double equals. If somebody types in yes, you got a .equals. Again, really causes problems. Okay, this is a primitive data type, so I need a double equals. Okay, if I was using yes, no, then I would use a .equals. Ask for the data, create an object, okay, and I want to keep track of both the gross amount, okay, and the net amount. Okay, those two methods we just looked at are in the invoice class. I'm in the invoice driver class, object.method, object.method. Okay, small steps are wonderful. And then update the accumulators because that makes it nicer for debugging. But you could have just said total num equals total num plus INV. Oh, I could have said, yeah, what? Where did num go? Oh, no, here. I could have said total net equals total net plus INV.net. Okay, and here I could have said total num equals total num plus INV.getNum. Write that down. Equals total num plus INV.getNum. Okay, because again, that's going to get the number on the other side. Here I could have actually done, okay, but I would do it in the small steps, which works out good as you go through. All right, print it out. Okay, there you go. And this one actually has a little bit of data validation in it. Okay, we'll look at more detail later when we actually do that as we go through. But here, while more does not equal y, more does not equal no, n, because we know how to do loops. This is a cool loop. More to calculate, y or n. If they type in something else, it won't let them out of here. Okay, you don't have to do a lot of data validation, but that's kind of a neat little piece of data validation. And then again, make certain that your totals are printed outside of your while loop. All right, smart robot. 2 fields, no argument constructor, full constructor, 2 string, getters and setters. Nothing new in here. Smart robot driver. Okay, I'm going to keep track of the smartest robot. This is a good one to look at, I think, for one of the problems we're going to do as you go through that. Okay, and so this is like fun with numbers on steroids when you actually do that. Okay, when you do that. And so this here is a nice, it's got some data validation in it. Look through this one and you do that. Okay, and I'm going to do this with a sentinel. And so I'm going to do this until the robot name equals end. And so we ask for the robot name. If the robot name equals end, then we're going to, you could just do a break, except I want to print out some data when I actually do that. And again, notice object.method. I want you to really look at this. If smart robot less than next robot, then we've got to indeed keep track of who the highest robot is when you actually go through and do that. And so this has a little bit more detail in it. Go through this one carefully, okay, and see how this thing works when you do that. I have a smartest robot, okay, so I'm keeping track of him. And if the robot is the highest, I'm going to set the name to the current name and set the IQ to the current IQ. And so once I get out of the loop, I can print out who the smartest robot is. Very cool when you do that. All right, one more. Day and day driver. Let me talk about this class a little bit, kind of interesting. It used to be that there was not a good way, believe it or not, in Java to do dates, D-A-T-E-S, dates, until very recently, like in JDK 8. And part of it was, it's not as simple as you might think, because dates are different throughout the world. And so what Java did was it actually had a date class and it had a calendar class, and they weren't that great. This is great for you guys to know to make sure that you understand this, because then what you do is you do exactly, I wonder if my speakers are off. Or I hope my speakers haven't been off all along as we go through. I think I just turned them off. I think I'm back. Okay, so date and a date class. And so the idea of this was that in JDK, that Java did not have a good calendar class. And so what we did was we would go back or a date class, DATE class. So we'd write our own. All right, and that's the trick of it, is if Java doesn't have something you like, then go back and create your own as you go through and do it. And so I created my own day class. I kind of borrowed it from places as you went through, and then I could use it from then on out. These are kind of neat. These are java.comments. We'll talk later about how to use those and what we're doing with those, but I've got one written up here and you can actually see this. Now, what I want to talk about with this guy very simply is the fact that there's some pretty complicated code here. This is one that I generate. I used to use all the time. Look at that. You don't have to know how to use how this actually works. You just have to know the signature, and I'll be back to that as we go through. This is a very cool class because it can create days for you as you go through. All right. And so what this says is for this, let's see what this class does for me. Why, and don't worry about this implements. What does this class do for me? Okay. Ooh, this constructs today's date. Really? That constructs today's date. The no argument constructor. And this one creates a date for a year, a month, and a day. That's really pretty cool. How does this work with Gregorian calendar? I don't know. I don't care. Yeah, I do care. Okay, when you actually do that. But here's the cool thing, is I don't have to know that. If I do this, because I know how to call a no argument constructor, and I've had people ask before, why do we ever have no argument constructors? Because of exactly right here. Because look at this. This is the coolest thing in the world. I can just say day D equals new day, and no matter when I run it, depending on when I run it, it'll be today's date. Okay. There's Christmas 2019. Let's try 2020. How far till Santa Claus comes? Okay. There is a days between method. How does it work? I don't know. But I do know how to use it. Object.method. Arguments. There's my argument. Okay. And parameters. And remember, this is where this guy over here starts getting really useful. Days between. There it is. This says, I can tell you the dates right there. And these are comments, so it helps you. The days between this and the day parameter returns the number of days between this and the day parameter. That's cool. I don't know how that works with Julians. Yeah, I do. Is all that says is it's a public. We said they have to be public. It returns an int, which is the number of days. Days between, pass me another day, and I'll tell you how many days between. Okay, I know how to use that. Object.method. So this is going to tell me there's Christmas, there's today's date. This is going to tell me how many days between now and Christmas when you actually do that. Okay. If I create a loan on, oh, let's make this 20, who cares? March 7th, coming up here, a couple days. Okay. And I want to say that I'm going to borrow it for 90 days. Okay. How many, when is it due when you do that? So I can take this program and I can run it as a Java application. There you go. There are 298 days till Santa comes. You got a ways to go. And if you borrow on March 7th, which happens to be a Saturday, notice it even tells you what day of the week it is. That's cool. It's going to be due on Friday, June 5th. How do those methods work? I don't know. Okay? I don't care. I need to know how to use them. And that's the whole goal, okay, of this module, is to figure out how to use these methods when we actually go through and do that. All right. So next thing you're going to do, don't worry, it's not going to be that complicated. Oops, we did that one. Number 11, look at stock and stock driver. Get the programs to run. All right. So my next thing I would do after I looked at that is I would take this and I would take that. Oops, take that. Let's take that and hold on the shift key and take that. Control copy. Control paste into mine. So I'm starting to collect what I'm going to turn into my teacher. Read my comments. Okay. Read my comments. Create 5 fields. There they are. These red X's will go away as soon as you create your fields. Create an empty and a full constructor. Write a calc cost method. So now we're going to actually be doing blueprints, but adding extra methods. Write a method named count current cost. Now, how do you know how to do that? Look at methods in a nutshell. But I will tell you exactly what I want. Here's the name of the method. It is always public for us, so I don't have to tell you that. There are no parameters. It returns a double. Okay? Here's the name of the method. No parameters. Returns a double. And then make sure you generate your getters and setters. All right. Stock driver. Next thing you're going to do. Okay, you're going to, come on, stock driver, you can do that. There you go. Go through and do exactly my comments. If you call the method, note it is in the stock class, object.method. Okay, call that. Okay, and so it's getting used to doing this object.method. If you have trouble with this, go back and look at methods in a nutshell. All right, cool. So that you've done the first two, and if you're sticking with me, then you've gotten down to here. All right. Next thing, vacation and vacation driver. Same type of thing, blueprint and a driver. A little bit more complicated here as far as adding some extra stuff, but go through here. Okay, I've got fields, 3 instance variables. I got a constructor, an empty constructor, getters and setters. I list it this way, but put your getters and setters at the bottom, please. Okay, I need an update sales method. I need a total value sales of total values. And again, takes no parameters, returns a total value. Do not return a string. Okay, it returns a double when you actually do that. Write a vacation driver. Okay, with a nested for loop. Ooh. And so to help you with this driver, I have kind of given you comments here. I don't have a start file over there, but I've given you kind of comments here. So work on that. Let's see how we do on that. Get some questions out there. If I can help you some more with this one, let me know. So this week I'd be working on those 3 and then get started on 14. Notice that 14, you do have a start file. So go ahead and make certain that you look at that start file. Or you can create your own, but it'll be a whole lot harder when you do that. And so the next thing I would do, once I did my vacation drivers, I'd take these guys, okay, and copy them up here as well as you go through and work on these. Okay. Now, what is quote unquote driver? Why is it different? We're going to use Java's string class. We've talked about the string class. We've talked about Java's classes. That Java provides a very rich environment for us as far as what it provides. And the question is, how do I understand what that is? What methods have Java provided for me? Now, remember, when we use methods, we do not, when we use them, not when we define them. We're brilliant. We define methods. We've been doing it. When we use methods, method calls, we do not have to know how it actually works. We don't have to know the guts of the code inside of it. Okay, methods in a nutshell says to use a method, you just need to know what class it's in, access modifier, which is always going to be public, I don't care, return type, name of the method, what is its parameter list, because my arguments have to match that. All right, now Java's language is very, very complete. We've got all of this stuff. In each of these, which is called a collection of these things, okay, we've got all of those packages. In each of those packages, we have all of these classes. Notice they name their classes correctly, capital, 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 capital. How do I know how do I know what's there? That's a question that asks. It just takes getting used to it. But I promise you, if it's something that you probably need, Java's probably written it for you. Okay, so Google and look for it. Now, once I find what I want, i.e., we're going to talk about that now, the string class. Okay, when you actually do that. And this is what the Virginia Western quiz is going to be on this week. Okay, and this is what you're going to do for quote as you go through. How do I use what Java has provided for me? And how do I know how to use it? What methods are there? You go and look at what's called the APIs, Application Programming Interface. All right, and that method that and the movie you want to watch for what we're just starting to talk about here is right there. Okay, And I'll be going over some of that now, and then you're going to watch that movie for me, I promise. I promise. I know you promise to do that. What you do is go out to Google. We love Google. Java, string. I want to know how to use the string class, not Spring. I want to know how to use a string class. There you go. Okay, there's 7, there's 9, doesn't make much difference. Those are called the Oracle docs or the APIs, Application Programming Interface. You will become great at looking at this stuff and understanding it. This is Java's documentation. This is how Java documents, okay? Part of it won't make sense now, but as we go through, it'll make a lot more sense. The name is string. It's in java.lang, okay? We already know that means, ooh, cool, I don't have to write an import statement. This is the inheritance chain. Mod 6 will understand that. Interfaces will understand that. Mod 6. It's a final class. I don't know what that means until Mod 6. I don't know what all that means. That's fine. But I do know the string class has fields and methods. That's all it's got. So I can read through here. It'll tell me everything I need to know. Ooh, that's been around since JDK1, which means it's been here forever. It has one field. I can't use it anyhow. I don't care. Next thing I care about is how do I make objects? Look at Java's constructors. Wow, 17 of them or so. How to construct an object. There's a no argument constructor. I see it right there. And a whole bunch of other ones. Okay, as you go through. All right. Here's the guts. Methods. Okay. Java has all of these methods, which is really pretty cool. Okay. Object.method. So I have to create a string object, and then I can use any of these methods as I go through. Let's look at one. There's the name of the method. There's the parameter list. There's the return type. Okay, there's the name of it. There's the parameter list. There's the return type. Now, if I want more details about it, I can click on this and it will tell me more about it as you go through. Okay, and that's really pretty cool as you look at this. And this is actually part of this document that's at the very bottom. All right, so how do I actually use that, and do I always have to come out here to see the Java docs? The Java docs give you a lot of good details, but Eclipse will give you just about the same thing. And so if I take this and let me just come down here, and this is what I was doing Sunday when everything went defunct. I'm going to create myself a package called, and I probably won't give this to you because we don't have much. I'm not going to write much of this here. And the other thing is that you've got a whole movie on this on how to use APIs. So I might not. Okay, so if I come on here, I do a Java class, and I'll call it play, which is what I was trying to do when it died on Sunday. I want it to run. There you go. Okay, I'm going to play with the string class just a little bit. All right, so I'm going to create myself a string. I know how to do that. We're going to pick on Rachel because I was picking on her when we died on Sunday night, okay, when the internet died on Sunday night. Maybe that was why, if you want to do that. Okay, and then what I would like to do is I would just want to play with the string class, and that's what you're going to do in this quote problem. You're going to play with the string class, and so I don't want to do much of it here. There are, hint, hint, couple more here. I think I go through this with methods in a nutshell. There's more with string class, there's math class, there's check valid. We'll do some of that next week as we go through and do that. I might look at one of these this week as we go through. No, I won't do that this week because those are actually static. Okay, talking to myself, that's pretty sad. I want to know what the third character is in her name. Okay? Now, part of the reason in mod 3, I always did our for loop for I equals 0, I is less than collection or whatever it was, dot size, when you actually do that, or how many times I wanted to loop through it. Okay, for I equals 0, I want to do 10 times. I did for I equals 0, I is less than 9. Everything in computers essentially starts counting at 0. So this is the 0th. That's the first character, or as far as the index, when we index this. Okay, so the third character, C, is actually at location 0, at location 2, because that's 0, that's 1, that's 2. Okay, and so I'm looking for the C when I do that. Okay, now, how do I do that? Well, I can do name dot. And look it, right here is all of that stuff we saw before. Right here is all the explanation. So if I look at this guy, it says, ooh, okay? This is the name of the method. That green circle means public. There's the parameter list. There's the return type. So I've got everything I need. Don't worry about this last thing. It tells you which class it comes from. That it should come from the string class because it's a string. When we start talking mod 6 and talk about inheritance, it really could come from other places, but there you go. All right, returns the character at the specific index. An index ranges from 0 to length -1. So they explain it over here. All right, so what I really want is name character at 2. Okay, so that's how I'm going to get the letter C. Now, part of the problem with that, and I'm going to tell, when you guys send me code, I'm going to say, hey, you did this, is I just told Java to do object.method. Go take this object, call that method, and then once you get that answer, throw it away. Huh? Throw it away. Why? Let me look at it again. It returns a character. Okay? You didn't do anything with it. And so what actually happens is, and a couple of you have done this with your toStrings. Okay, you come over in the driver and you just call toString. And Java says that's cool. Okay, throw it away. That's why we had to do system.println object.toString. Same thing here, and you can do it in 2 steps. Java's telling you it's going to return a character. Okay, I'll call it value. Why not? I can't spell, but we'll call it value. Now what I've done is I've told Java to go get the character at 2, which is the 3rd character, and store it somewhere so I can do a sysout value. So if I now take this and run it, it's going to give me the letter C, which is perfectly fine. Okay, so don't forget to do something with it if you call it. Okay, I want to know how many characters. Now, you can do this in 2 steps. Again, I tend to do things in small steps so I can debug them. You could also just do this. Object.method. Character code index. Let's see what looks good. Ooh, length. Again, click it once, returns the length of the string. The length is equal to the number of, oh, that's what I want. There you go. Object.method. Okay, 6. Now, I think Rachel was asking about this when the internet went down, but it's 6, not 5. Length, and again, read the API. So length says how many actual characters there are, not what the last index was. So that's index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, total of 6 characters when you do that. All right. So if you look at this example, I think we'll go through these 2, and then you guys can start working on quote. Go through and read my comments here, okay? I talked to you about 2 different ways to make a string. This bothers me. It happened, but that's okay. You should not be able to write line 12 in Java. They do it just because we use strings so much, it's a shorthand. It is the only class where you can create an object and not use the word new. If you had done this, it would have been the same thing, okay? I kind of wish they had made you do this, but we use strings so often that that's okay. But it's the only one, okay? But you can do it using that constructor that says you can create an object by passing characters in there. So that's a second way to do it, all right? I want to find the character at a specific location. There is what the APIs say. It says get the character at an index, returns a character. So object.method returns a character, print it out. Another cool method in the string class, you just want to get used to the string class, looks like this. I can concat. Concat means to paste it together, concatenate. 2 strings, and it returns a string consisting of the new string. So notice, I have to, or I should find some location to put it in, because again, if it returns something, catch it so that you can do something with it, like print it. So notice object dot method. Okay, here we go. Arguments and parameters must match a number and data type. So my parameter says, give me a string, and I will return you a string that has the two concatenated together. So I gave you a string. So it took my string, which is this, and concatenated RU at the end of it. Print it out. Okay, there's the equals ignore case. So if I take that as my name and that as another name, object dot method, there's the parameter that's required. So I passed it a string. Okay, and notice this is kind of interesting because when I look at the APIs for the equals ignore case method, it returns a Boolean. And so I printed out the Boolean. It's going to print out true or false. Yeah, it should print out true for those. There's your length. Okay. Here's one that's a little bit more complicated, which is fine. It's a substring. I want to get just a piece of a string starting at this location and ending at that location. That's pretty cool. You can do that. And so I want to take my string dot object dot method from location 3 to 8. Now remember, that's your offset 3. So that's actually the second, the third character. It's at location 3, so it's a fourth character, right? So it's from 4 up when you do that. All right, exactly, over and over again. So look through these. Dot length. Ooh, there's the 2 uppercase. Okay, so I'm going to take the string. I'm going to convert it to uppercase. I'm going to replace all the E's with a Z. That's kind of cool. And this is exactly what you're going to do for the quiz this week, my Virginia Western students, with a different class you've never seen before. We can read APIs. You should be good at them, okay, as you get through. So practice that. That's the only, if you get good at reading APIs, you can do amazing stuff in Java without even knowing what you're doing. How's that for a deal? All right, more strings, because you need this for quote. You could write these as methods, and that's what I'm going to be asking you to do with quotes, and that's why I had you do this as you go through. The number of O's in a string, it's going to return an int. I wrote this method when you actually did this, okay? So what I'm going to do, and again, we can start using everything we learned in mods 1, 2, and 3. I want to know how many O's there are, so I get myself a counter. I'm going to go through the length of a string. Ooh, notice how you do that. Notice the top of this for loop, s.length. That's pretty cool. Okay, it's how long that string is. If the character is an O or the character is a little o, the number of O's plus plus, return how many O's there are. You're going to do something really close to this in quotes, so make sure you know that. I want to know the last character of a string. Okay, last character. Well, notice, make sure you understand this code, and then you got it here. Dot length will tell me how many characters there are. So Rachel's going to have 6. Okay. But the indexes are 0 through 5. So notice I went and got the character at size -1, not size, because there's 0 to 5. I want to find what is the index character 5, which will give me the last one when you do that. So we've got to learn to read APIs, and we're going to practice that more as we go through. There's a movie out there for you as we do that. And so if you could get rolling here, okay, when you actually do that, okay, get through definitely through the widget, get through the stock driver, see how you're doing on the vacation driver, which you're writing from scratch, and get started on quote. You're going to be a long ways away, getting a long ways towards getting mod 4 done. And then we'll work together next week. Thanks, guys. Hopefully the re-recording worked better than the original one did. Thanks.